Hi, today Ask F5 shows you how to configure the Terminal Access Controller Access Control System Plus, or TACACS Plus, protocol for authenticating Big IP administrative users using the configuration utility. This configuration is like the TACACS Plus profile you might use for application authentication, but in this case it authenticates Big IP administrative connections and does not require a separate license. As with all remote authentication configurations, if the remote authentication server is unavailable to answer authentication requests, only locally defined user accounts, such as the default administrator account and the root command line account, can log into the system. In this demo, you configure the remote TACACS Plus authentication for local Big IP administrative users. You define the TACACS Plus servers, set the shared secret, and configure options such as service name, protocol name, and accounting behavior. To do so, log into the configuration utility. Go to System, Users, Authentication. On the authentication page, select Change. For user directory, select Remote TACACS Plus. For servers, enter the IP address and port of the TACACS Plus server and then select Add. Repeat this step to add additional TACACS Plus servers as needed in your environment. Next, configure the shared key. For secret, enter the TACACS Plus shared key. For confirm secret, re-enter the key. Note that the TACACS Plus secret does not support the pound character. For encryption, you can retain the default value enabled or select it disabled depending on your environment. In this demo, leave encryption set to enabled so that the TACACS Plus traffic is encrypted. The TACACS Plus server must be configured to respond to the service name you configure on the Big IP system. F5 recommends that you use the PPP service. So for service name, enter PPP. Note that this entry must be lowercase. Optionally, configure a protocol name. If configured, the TACACS Plus server must respond to the protocol name you configure on the Big IP system. If you do use this option, F5 recommends that you use the IP protocol. So for protocol name, enter IP. Note that this entry must also be in lowercase. If you need more control, for configuration, select Advanced. For authentication, select either Authenticate to first server or Authenticate to each server until success, depending on how you want the system to handle multiple TACACS Plus servers. In this demo, leave the default setting, Authenticate to first server. For accounting information, select Send to first available server or Send to all servers. This setting controls the sending of accounting, start, and stop packets if multiple TACACS Plus servers are defined and pluggable authentication module, or PAM, session accounting is available. For more information about these options, see this article linked below. For this demo, we'll select Send to first available server. For debug logging, you can enable additional logging for troubleshooting. When you select Enabled, the Big IP system logs debug information to the var log secure file so that an administrator can troubleshoot communication or authentication problem with the TACACS Plus server. In this demo, I'll leave debug logging set to disabled. Next, configure the default role for remote users. For role, select the user role that you want the Big IP system to assign as the default role for remote user accounts. This role is used when a remote user account does not match or is not explicitly assigned an F5 LTM user role attribute in the TACACS Plus server response. The Big IP system does not fall back to use any TACACS Plus role or permissions if F5 LTM user role is not specified. Make sure you select a default role that provides the permissions you want. For example, if you select guest and a remote user with a read-only TACACS Plus role permissions is authenticated but the TACACS Plus server response does not include an F5 LTM user role attribute, the default guest role is used and the user is granted guest permissions. For partition access, select the partition or partitions that you want users with remote accounts to have access to. For terminal access, select the appropriate access option for your environment. In this demo, select TMSH so that authenticated TACACS Plus users can access the Big IP traffic management shell from the command line. When you're done configuring the settings, select Finished. The Big IP system now uses TACACS Plus to authenticate administrative users based on your configuration. In some environments, you may need to adjust routing to ensure the Big IP system can reach the TACACS Plus server using the management interface. If you need to use the management interface to communicate with the TACACS Plus server and the server is in a different subnet, see this article linked below. That's it. If you have questions or comments, please send us an email. Thanks for watching.